Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here for our first webinar in this series. Thank you very much. We will be started at 11:05, just giving everyone an opportunity to come in the room and get settled. We're looking forward to having an informative and valuable conversation with you. We'll be started in 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, good morning again. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the BuyRentKenya and Building in Kenya webinar. We thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. So today's session is the first session in our webinar series. This is presented by BuyRentKenya and Building in Kenya partnership. And today we are talking about looking at mixed use developments. Inside of our overall theme for the series, winning in a pandemic. So I want to, we're going to take a moment here and we're going to look at what we're talking about, mixed use developments. Mixed use developments have a long history in Kenya. They have been developed and used in many areas across the country and in many ways. We've seen them in the Parklands area, we've seen them in Pipeline, and even the Great Rift Valley is an example in using of hospitality. And the prevalence over the last 4 to 5 years has kind of really increased, and we've seen a growth spurt of mixed-use developments. We've seen them around. We've seen Two Rivers, Tattoo City, Garden City, Freedom Heights, Alma and Ruaka coming up, Tattoo City, Thika Greens, Talisi, Miga, even English Point Marina in Mombasa, and of course, Konza City. Now, 15 months into this pandemic, we are living and working in new ways. And this pandemic is calling all of us to think about the styles in which we work together, where we live, what's the intersection between those, and is there a confluence between how we work and live? And it's starting to change preferences in the market. Preferences that are driven by demand and on the supply side that are impacting the ways that we see design, the ways that we think about how we present properties, the way that we actually do our work, all of us here as professionals in the built environment sector. And that's what we're here to discuss today. Are mixed use developments the strategy that professionals in the built environment should take on and putting their focus on in the future? Actually, what is this future for mixed use developments? What needs to be improved in mixed use developments for them to flourish, for them to thrive, for them to have the performance outcomes that as investors, both on the supply and demand side, are looking for? And so we're talking about how to win in a pandemic. And we're here to explore that conversation with the professionals that are here as panelists this morning. So I want to let you know the hashtags that we're using today and invite you to engage both in the Twitter sphere and here as well. You're welcome to put comments in the chat button. And so the hashtags that we're using, winning during a pandemic, mixed developments, are the future of real estate. So again, welcome. My name is Robyn Emerson. I'm the co-author of Building in Kenya. I'm the president of Women in Real Estate, and I'm an urban planner. And I'm excited to have on here a panel of professionals in the built environment, and we're going to hear from them today. I'm just going to do a brief introduction of them. We have Jayesh Chavda from TRV Properties. Jayesh, you'll just wave. Thank you. Wonderful. And then we have Esther Karegi, who is with Laser Property Services. Thank you, Esther. And then Wilson Mugambi of the Architectural Association of Kenya's president. So first, let me just take a moment and frame what are we talking about here when we're talking about mixed use developments. And so that we're all on the same page and really starting to look at, okay, if that's what we're talking about, then what is this in a Kenyan context, here in Nairobi when we have so many dynamics that affect the real estate sector and planning overall. So in a sense, mixed use development is, mixed use zoning are the planning of that says where the different uses of building uses are going to take place. So we're talking about where is the residential, where is the commercial, the institutional, the cultural uses, that they're all in one space and that they have a symbiotic nature to them where they work in harmony with each other. And, these mixed use developments, they can be a project themselves. They can be an entire development, if you will, and they are done by private developers, or they may be done by government, or some combination of the two. And so what we're looking at today is mixed use developments here in the Kenyan context. So I want to ask first of all, I want to ask Jayesh, I want to turn to you, Jayesh. Tell me, we're 1 year into the pandemic. People are starting to look at different purposes, if you will, for the real estate, and they're starting to think we have our family, we're working at home, and do I need to make a journey, a 1 hour journey to and from a workplace? My children are also possibly at home. Jayesh, tell me, in your view, is there a market shifting towards mixed use developments? Please, Jayesh. Well, Jayesh, I think you're still mute. If you can.
Hello, can you hear me now, guys?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Good morning, guys, everyone. Yes, Robyn, to answer your question, yes, we do see a big shift in the market change towards mixed-use developments because, as you mentioned, people do not want to travel far away. People work from home these days as well. So yes, there is a big shift of market change towards mixed-use development, and I think it is something that the future is going to be as well. We're adapting to a bit of the Western way of being around the same estate as well and being around your locality. So you don't have to worry about traveling far, especially fuel prices going up, X, Y, Z, having commodities around you as well makes it easier to be working from around the area that you would reside as well. So correct that, if that answers your question.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jayesh. So let me ask Esther. Esther, I know you work with developers, and I know developers it's a business, and they're looking for that return on their investments, right? Their return on the money that they're putting in and everything else. And we have seen that they are having a certain performance level that is we're noting that that performance level is higher than a single use, if you will. And so I just want to hear from you. Are developers seeing the juju beans, if you will? Are they looking and seeing, aha, there may be something here? And are you seeing a pivot to this and responding to Jayesh saying that, yes, there's a market interest there? Just Esther, maybe you can let us know what you're seeing from your end.
Yes, I do agree with you, Robyn, and I also agree with Jayesh. The market is moving towards that direction, and developers are excited about this kind of returns. Looking at the numbers, the researches that have been done, yes, for sure, the mixed-use developments are able to give a higher return, a much higher return than the single-use developments. But for a developer, it goes beyond just the return, especially looking at the developers I have worked closely with. There's so much more to it because they have to develop something that the market requires, the things that the market is looking for. Because when you do that, then you sell in the shortest time possible. They are looking at what's the best and highest possible return in terms of sale price and in terms of also rental. Because as a developer, as you sell, there is a possibility you may have to be left with a few to rent out as you're waiting for the market to autocorrect at some point in case the market has a problem. So yes, developers are looking at it, but in a more holistic way. It's beyond just returns. It's a case of looking at sustainability. It's a case of looking at risks. How do I spread the risks? You've seen in the market, sometimes some certain portfolios perform better than others. There's a time when malls were doing terribly. But if as a developer you have a mixed-use development, then you can be able to balance, because you have the mall on one side and you have the residents on the other side, and you have, say, an office block. So if the residents are not doing well, the mall and the office is working. If the office is not working, the mall and the residents are working. So it's a case of balancing your risk. It's a case of looking at the best and highest return, both short-term and long-term, as far as rental is concerned. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, wonderful. Great. Thank you very much. Wilson, we're seeing kind of a mixed bag over these years that I've talked about the recent contemporary times of mixed use development. We've seen a mixed bag of their success. Some of them maybe taking longer to flourish or to be completed. And so, as someone who designs projects, as someone who oversees such projects, what's your sense, Wilson, of the challenges that need to be addressed for these mixed-use developments to actually flourish? What's your sense of that?
Thank you very much, Robyn. First and foremost, I think the number one sort of element that needs to be sorted out when it comes to design and even planning this kind of developments is the planning and zoning of the respective area that's going to have this kind of project. We have, of course, the authority of the counties or whatever areas that we're planning, or whoever's in charge of development control, not actually thinking ahead. And you find people coming up with big schemes of a residential area. You'll find that it's not only poorly serviced, but also the general notion is that, yes, you can just have houses, but people don't live in isolation. People need amenities. People need to have a shop. They need to have a butchery. They need to have even an M-Pesa shop. Such a small thing, but it's relevant. So the planning element needs to factor in the lifestyle of people, and you can't just have a residential area without having a commercial zone within. So there's an element in it in terms of planning. Second, which I think is one of the biggest things that developers face, is the infrastructure challenge. Because yes, you'll get a nice parcel of land, the location is good, but what do you face? Poor roads. You don't have water, you don't have sewer, even electricity is another connection issue. So we need to have an infrastructure plan along with the planning elements of zoning and subdivision, because it's not just about cutting a piece of land into plots. You also need to think about how they are well serviced. That's when you look at something, for instance, like Tatu City, they went from the bottom up, where you look at, let us service these parcels. Thereby, anyone plugging in will just have to connect to their respective infrastructure elements. And that's one thing which I think mixed urban developments lack, or rather face in terms of a challenge. Finally, I think when you think of the element of the mixed urban developments, what do they bring together? A lot of people. It basically creates a cosmopolitan zone. And one of the key things I think we need to think about is greening them, because let's not just talk about sustainability in terms of, yes, the building can be green and all that. Let's also provide open space. Let's make it attractive. Let's have a place whereby if I'm going to shop with my family, I know the kids can be playing somewhere. And at the same time, someone else can have a business meeting. Let it not just be, I walk in, I shop, I'm out. Let's make it as conducive and as natural to the overall flow of human activity. Yes, that's what I would like to say. Thanks.
Hello?
Yes, Robyn, got me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Esther, I think your mic is still on mute. We can't hear you.
Esther, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, there I go. I'm saying I like your point, Wilson, where you're talking about infrastructure and looking at planning zones and planning guidelines. I look at estates like Buruburu that were initially designed to be mixed-use developments with a commercial area, schools, and housing. And today you look at Buruburu and it's a sad state, because people have put in more units than were designed to be there, which puts a strain on the infrastructure. Robyn, over to you.
Wonderful. Apologies for that. Thank you very much for continuing. Thank you, Wilson. I did get those notes, and I actually did want to hear from Jayesh also. Jayesh, when people are out there looking for, you're with the market and people are looking at these mixed-use developments, and given what Wilson mentioned are the items and so forth, what are they finding? What's the gap, if you will? If Wilson has kind of said this is what will enhance these, if it's green space, if it's the infrastructure, when people are out there looking at mixed developments, can you kind of give us some feedback on what people are finding, just so those of us in the room can know, what do we need to, what's the feedback out there? What is the market telling us about what's on offer?
All right, so if we're looking at basically currently what's on offer, like we've pretty much seen a lot of estates such as for Miga estate or Parati Homes and all those guys basically. And also we've got areas like Two Rivers, Garden City as well, which has got commercial and shopping blocks and residential as well. However, I feel that, a lot of people want to live around the area where an estate can be much more bigger in our acreage outside Nairobi as well. But at the same time, when they are developing those, something like, for example, if you got the Migar or if it's developing something like that, what you need to consider and probably put into place as well, probably schooling has to be coming into place as well. If someone can actually think about, a developer needs to think about maybe having schooling around the area, maybe having shops, as Wilson had earlier mentioned, having small shops or retail outlets as well. Don't try to just keep on putting up shopping centers because people might not be able to afford rents for the shopping center, and try to look at the area that actually are concentrating on as well. Let us understand the demographic of people living around the area. Now, if you're going to put up a shopping center outside Nairobi, the rental is not going to be able to give you a return of investment at the end of the day as well. So having a smaller structure for the retail side will accommodate the people living around the area as well, will help that sort of a state to grow as well. Also, basically, looking at the activities in terms of entertainment activities, you got the cafeterias, restaurants, all those things around the area as well. As Wilson rightfully put, that you could be in the same estate where someone could go shopping at the same time. You could also have a meeting as well, and you're schooled around the area as well. That would also be a good thing to be having as well. Also, taking into consideration of a mixed-use development, perhaps small medical centers around the estate as well, which allows for the residents around the estate to be able to go there rather than rushing to other hospitals or medical centers, which are quite far as well. Infrastructure, of course, very important. Borehole, street lighting, all those things, roundabouts, all those things need to be in place so that it's maintained and it's taken care of in the right way as well. It's like we got the Tattoo City, which is currently quite nicely done with the infrastructure as well. But having similar stuff for a state as well outside Nairobi to be able to be affordable for the local people as well, and for everyone not who's gonna want to spend so much money at the same time. That's what I would suggest as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jayesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Esther, when you hear what it takes, if you will, to do such a development, we've heard the investment, the infrastructure investment, the building. I'm still here. If you can still hear me, I see my pictures drop, but I'm still with you. You can see what it takes. Is this the hindrance, if you will, to more mixed-use developments coming on board? Is it extremely? Is it prohibitive? Right? Just let us. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say so. If you're thinking of a mixed-use development, then you're looking at figures that could be a lot higher than just a single-use development. And this has discouraged so many developers into considering mixed-use development. Another thing is, if you look at the metropolitan area, like the Nairobi area, the places where most people would want to live, we are somehow limited in terms of size of land that is available to accommodate proper mixed-use development. But it's interesting, and I'm happy to hear Wilson talk about it, how we can consider doing vertical mixed-use development as opposed to just the horizontal ones. Most of the projects we've seen, if we talk about Tattoo City, Garden City, if we talk about Freedom Heights, and many, many more of those, most are vertical, are horizontal, where it is spread on a huge parcel of land. You have a 20, 30, 50 acre parcel, and then you have houses and you have the mall. But right now, we may not have the luxury of having such parcels of land in the areas where housing demand is highest. So maybe what we need to start thinking about is how can we do more vertical mixed-use development as opposed to developments that are stretched. And then looking at probably partnerships whereby the government can encourage people to come in to do mixed-use developments by offering land for free. And the developer, when they come in to put in the mixed-use development, it would be a lot cheaper if the government is giving them land for free. I've seen that happening in Machakos County are doing that to investors. That will attract investors to be interested in that project because it will lower significantly the cost of the entire project. Over to you. Maybe
Okay.
Wilson, you could sorry.
Okay. No, thank you. No, thank you very much for that. So so Wilson, we're in Nairobi County, and all the counties supposed to have a physical development plan. Nairobi has one, the new plan, which was developed in 2014, that was, elaborately laid out where development was supposed to take place, the types of development. If you can recall, it had nodes even, right? Nodes and places where we were going to have districts, if you will, and places where development was going to be condensed, where we were going to be able to create the connectivity, both non-motorized connectivity as well as motorized. But Wilson, it's 6-7 years on. Those plans are not being fully implemented. Being the way they were, and possibly wouldn't be ignorant on developers personally taking on the infrastructure. Wilson, maybe you can what's your thoughts about the impact of that, and how can professionals and the government's role to and bring about all of these development that we know just will improve the quality of life, they will improve the quality of return of investments, and so forth. What's your take on that?
Thank you, Robyn. One of the things I think we need to do, and it's always the elephant in the room whenever we talk about matters planning, we need to delink the political from the professional elements of this process, because we find ourselves being very dependent on the so-called guys up there in the political class, making decisions and pushing. But as professionals, and that's one thing AAK is very passionate about, is we need to keep pushing the agenda for following the guidelines of the planning system. Because when you look at the Nile plan, there's not only the nodes that were created, there's also a very significant reference to planning for the infrastructure. You find things like integrated solid waste management, stormwater plans, transport plans. All these elements, if properly synchronized, and that's one thing we professionals can do. We can help the government. Of course, them listening to us is another ball game altogether, but we need to keep drumming the agenda that all these things will not happen without our input. And one of the things we can keep doing is ensuring that we have a stake, not only at the planning level, but also at the implementation level, because there's no point of the government subcontracting someone from another country to come and implement something which we obviously have the know-how and the expertise. Another thing that you mentioned is about the nodes and all those other areas that were created. It was actually quite elaborate, and it's quite sad that 7 years down the line, I think the only thing which has come in a form of changing the scope of planning is actually in the form of some urban renewal, in the form of what we are calling the affordable housing program. Again, it's politically instigated. There are better ways we can go around it. So you see where I'm trying to go with this. We can actually pick on that document and fine-tune every element of the clusters that were created. Because I recall we had things like in the Eastlands area, we had the clusters that have been created. We also had I'm trying to think of the other things that there was a detailed planning of sub-centers, you know, right, not just within the CBD, all the way outwards, because one of the things you notice is that most people have adopted a lifestyle of moving out of the CBD. Why? Because commuting from anywhere, Nairobi, within the CBD, even if I move from Westland, say, to South Sea, it can easily take me 2 to 3 hours. And that's where you have the issue of transport. So all those things can actually be eliminated by professionals being more involved in the process and less dependent on the political class in terms of guiding and implementing the policy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wilson. And I think everyone here, again, thank everybody for being here. We're up to 82 people. Again, hashtag winning during the pandemic, mixed use developments. One on here, as your professionals in the built environment, you are the advocates for this, what Wilson's talked about. We're asking you everyone to not see yourself as someone that's purely transactional. You have on the ground about what's happening, the impact of these projects and these please give voice back to the people, regulators, and even the professional bodies here. Please give your voice back. Okay, so I'm being told you can't hear me clearly. I apologize for that. I handed the question actually back to Esther. Hopefully you can hear this question. Esther, as you talked about in terms of some of these mixed-use developments, and many of them are predicated on anchor. We're seeing that sometimes their business fail. And then what happens to that project when it is so heavily reliant on an anchor? How do we cushion these developments? And even McGaw had a challenge. A sports center that didn't come through on time, or the hospital. It's so heavily reliant on that we might not succeed. How do we push developments from that kind of risk? I don't know, was that communicated at all? Sorry about that.
I missed quite a bit of it. Your voice is not quite clear.
But if I got you right,
yeah, something about how can we ensure that we don't have over-reliance on an anchor, is that right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes, that is true. We've seen that happening in many of the shopping malls throughout the country when the retail market was significantly affected. My take would be then that is where mixed use comes in handy, because you don't overinvest in one aspect, but you spread your risk with the different themes within the development, such that if the mall is not working well, then you have the residences. At the same time, even within that development where you probably have a mall and you have an anchor tenant, there is need to have flexibility in our design. Flexibility to mean if one kind of user is not working, this same development can be able, with a few adjustments, to be used for something slightly different. I'll give an example. Look at KMA Center in Upper Hill. It was a mixed-use development. There's an office block at the front, and then we have the apartment units at the back. They expected the apartment units to sell quite fast. That didn't happen. So they transformed the apartment units into office units, and right now it's fully sold. So I would look at it as an issue of maybe how we plan the mixed-use developments and how we design it in such a way that it has flexibility to be changed. If you have a block that is a shopping mall and you don't have adequate tenants for the shopping mall, it should be able to accommodate a different user, say office. The developers just need to accept some bit of flexibility, which then allows them to quickly shift maybe from one theme to another with a few adjustments in the same development. As we wait for Robinson, maybe I can have Wilson weigh in on the issue of design and flexibility.
Thank you. That's a very good point, Esther. the issue of flexibility is key, because you mentioned people realize that in the middle of a project, they're not able to sell. And one of the key things is how flexible is your project. And that's where the professionals come in. They need to have a mind to think of, in case plan A does not work, what is our plan B, C, D, and E? Because on one end, the developer, Jayesh, can tell you he wants returns, he wants guarantee on tenancy or sale. So the last thing you need is to have empty spaces, and yet there's an opportunity to bring flexibility. Let's take it even to the smaller kind of mixed use, because we're focusing a lot on the malls and all these other larger scale. If you look at somewhere like Eastlands, where you have someone who has put up a block of bed sitters, the whole ground floor will ideally be shops. You'll find an M-Pesa shop, a chemist, a very small mini market, so to speak. That's a mixed use development. And that person is actually addressing the need of that area. And there's always a demand as to why people do it. You realize the so-called small-scale developers, we don't take them too seriously at times, but when you pick their minds, they really know how to study the market and know what is there. And now we need to translate that even to the larger scale, because don't expect a huge supermarket to come and, as Robyn was mentioning, you may not need an anchor tenant, but maybe you just need 3 other people to occupy that same space, and you end up even having bigger returns. So flexibility, I agree, is key, but also one of the things that I will advise anyone who's keen on these kind of developments, think outside the box, and just think of that last person, that small user at the bottom, what they would want. So you realize with that kind of mindset, you're able to accommodate more people and guarantee better feedback or output for your project.
Good.
Okay.
I think Robyn's still not there.
Jayesh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, team, for carrying on. This is we're building as we are going. This is teamwork right here. Thank you, patience. Yeah. So I just wanted to come back and just ask. There's a question in the chat that's talking about mixed use developments. Are they for? Are there people that are being left out of this quality of living? That is there? How do we have this quality of living that we're saying is available in mixed use developments? Available more for the numbers. Okay. I am so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, Robyn.
Yep, go on.
Okay. The question was, is mixed use development only for middle class Kenyans?
No. I mean, it's for everyone. Anyone can have mixed-use development. You know, anyone can. If you look at something like Juja, when you're entering Juja town, for example, you still got the shops at the bottom and the residentials on the top, and it's closer to Jacquard University and all that as well. So it's for everyone and anyone. It's only basically understanding how you're going to design it and how you're going to actually implement it, so that even the developer's getting his return of investment at the same time. As Wilson said, it's all about thinking outside the box and making it possible. So I wouldn't say that is only for middle class. It is across the board, and it can be adapted for every other Kenyan at the same time. It's just trying to think outside the box and making it realistic as well. Even developers need to be smart in terms of the costing of their development as well. So having a understanding of the budget, and also concentrating to make sure that the project doesn't go out of proportion on the costing side, will assist in ensuring that it becomes possible to have that sort of development.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jayesh. And can you tell me, on the ground, are we finding mixed use development for all types of housing class?
Sorry, can you repeat that, because I just didn't hear you at all?
Yes, no problem. On the ground, are we finding mixed use development?
Yes, we do. Like if you look at something like Parklands currently, like there's a lot of, if you look at a lot of places in Parklands, there are quite a few number of places that they have the shopping area at the bottom. They've got apartments on top, but just around it, they've also got a shopping center. They've got a grocery store as well. So yes, we are finding that they are on ground as well, and this can now also work. The same thing can work at the other places outside Nairobi town as well, and it's possible. Like recently, what I noticed is something like If you go to Kileshwa, in the roundabout currently, if you've noticed, there's a new petrol station which has got the shops in the as well around it on 2-level, 3-level shops. It's got offices as well on top as well, and it's surrounded around residential area as well. So it's made it possible for something to be there for people to not leave and go far and be around the area. There's shops, there's residentials, and there's a petrol station as well. There's medical facilities as well. So they are on ground currently, yes.
Maybe
Okay.
I could weigh in on that if you...
Yes, please. Go ahead, Esther.
Yes, go on, Esther.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with Jayesh. The units are there. The different mixed-use developments for low-end purchasers are there. And I'll just give you an example. One of the developers I work with is County Pension Fund. And they're doing several projects. They're starting to roll out a couple of mixed-use developments across the country. And this time round, and like Wilson said, it will not have a political angle to it. It's a private developer doing it, but the developer is called County Pension Fund. And they have a project coming up in Kisumu for as little as 2.5 million. And this project consists of shops, residents, and there's a school, there's residents, there's the shops, there's office. So you see, it's actually across the board. It's not really cut out strictly for the high end and the middle end. If you're talking about 2.5, then that is low end. And in that low end, then it's a mixed use project. And it's not just that one. There are several others in Komarok. Like I know a couple of projects in Komarok which have both residents and shopping facilities within the development below the 10 million mark. So yes, it's for everyone.
Great, thank you, Esther. So I want to turn it to some questions. Is mixed-use development, somebody's asking, a project suitable for a rural area? What are the, maybe I can ask you that, Wilson, what are the conditions, if you will, for mixed-use development that makes it suitable or not suitable for a rural area?
Actually, that question sort of asked as if there are no mixed-use development in rural areas. They're actually there. What you have in rural areas are those very small, remember the dukawalas you find along the road? You find that there's a small sort of town center which has been actually put up by one person, let's say Esther. She put up a very small center whereby someone is able to have a small shop. You can have a tailor. For me, all these things are demand driven. So you find that there's a need for a certain service. And what is that service? In the rural areas, you definitely need, for instance, a posho mill. You definitely need a butchery. You need a small kiosk, not a supermarket, obviously. You'll need a chemist, actually, right? You see people realizing they don't need to go all the way to the main centers for drugs. So you put up a small chemist. Next thing, you also have a very small M-Pesa shop. There's actually, all of it is demand driven and it is there, and rural areas have been doing it and they are fine tuning it. And it's up to us as professionals to guide them such that they're able to put up things which are actually appealing. Because yes, I'm traveling and most people will be like, there's no shop there. But if you have nice signage, decent parking, you'll find those things are there in the rural areas. You just need parking for 2-3 cars, not a whole parking for 100 or 200 vehicles. So as I mentioned, it's just mindset. The mindset is all we need to change, and you'll realize opportunities are there and the gap is there for us clear.
Okay, great, thank you. Someone has raised a point that without mixed-use development in current dense areas like Kilimani, Lavington, and Kileleshwa, we are finding mini malls that are popping up. One, it's very expensive to do a mixed-use development, but Kilimani, all of these areas are prime areas for mixed-use developments. But what we're finding is 1-story, 2-story mini malls, not the highest and best use of those plots. Maybe, Esther, what's the missed opportunity here for developers in not taking on a mixed-use project in these areas which are prime for them?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Robyn. For most developers, not all, most developers, and especially the ones I've worked with, like local authorities, pension trust, before they venture into any environment, any development, a feasibility study must have been done to establish what is the demand for that area. So in some cases, it calls for a minimal as opposed to a mixed use that will have residents and the mall in the place. Why? Let me give you an example like Kilimani. Right now, we have an oversupply of apartment units in Kilimani. So even if you did a minimal on the ground floor and apartment units on top, it may not really add too much value to the apartment units because Kilimani already has quite a bit of shopping malls within it. So people don't really need that much proximity to a shopping mall in Kilimani. So it just goes with the feasibility that has been done and looking at what is it that that particular market demands. And if that market demands for, say, a shopping mall, there is no need of you putting up shopping mall and office just for the sake of having a mixed use, yet there is no demand for the office. A mixed use comes in handy when there is adequate demand for the different themes that you want to put together. So unless we think of it slightly differently, as opposed to just having, thinking how do we go higher on the two-story building, thinking of it holistically as to what other theme can come into play other than residence. So that would be my take on that.
Oh, great, thank you very much. And Jayesh, and when the market thinks of mixed-use development, that word is used to describe a whole myriad of projects, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
What, even somebody is asking here, when people think of mixed use, they just think Garden City, and that's it. How does the market, when they come to you, do they say, I want a mixed use development? Or do they say, I want this, I want that, and then you're able to bring them back to, well, that is a mixed use development, and here's what I have available. So I think what they're asking is what leads? Is it people looking for, I want a mixed use development, or people leading and saying, I want this lifestyle, what can I find?
I think that question can only be answered that mixed use development is not necessarily something on one block of land where we can have all the facilities of all the amenities required in terms of commercial, residential as well. It could also be an area as well, which can start getting developed basically. So you can actually have all aspects required to be able to surround the area and make it like an estate itself and have everything in it itself. You could have a barrier, like, just give you an example. Let's say we were looking at something like Runda Estate or maybe Miga Estate, for example, right? Where you enter through one gate. But when we enter those places, we only see residential around it. However, if someone actually ends up putting up a bit of shopping area around it, schooling, maybe common ground, sporting facility as well, medical facility as well, then that area has become mixed-use development as well. So it's basically up to the person what sort of a lifestyle they do want as well. And that is why I would say strongly that the possibility of mixed-use development doesn't necessarily have to be 8 acres of land or 50 acres of land. It can also be done in as small as 2 acres of land as well. Create your own estate and create your own harmony, create your own family, create your own sort of bond around each other and neighborhood that you can trust and live with and be around and feel secure. And that's, again, a mixed-use development as well. Over to you, Robyn.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So just want to raise in, somebody is, asking that in our developments, how are we taking into consideration, do you see any challenges for people that maybe have a physical challenges in any of the development? Do you see any advantages or disadvantages to people in those people with disadvantage, physical disabilities? Somebody is asking, are mixed developments, more friendly, if you will, in their development for people of our society. I don't know if you've noticed anything different about that. Just wanted to. I mean, my take is that it's somewhat is new, and so we would hope to think that inside of these developments, they are starting to look at the connectivity of walkways, pavements, and so forth. That does allow for that and accommodate better for that. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
That's
okay.
I can chime in, Robyn.
Yeah, please. Thanks, Wilson.
When you look at everyone who's physically challenged, there's more consideration now. In fact, you find like in Nairobi County, one of the things you actually need to factor in a commercial space is access for the physically challenged. So even when you're doing these strip malls that you see around Kilimani, Kileleshwa, and even the other smaller scale, which you find on even half an acre, there's more consideration, and professionals actually doing it subconsciously without even having to be pushed, because you need to plan for everyone. You cannot just plan for the able, so to speak. You need to be able to ensure that everyone who needs a service, regardless of their ability, they're able to access. So it's definitely something which is happening, and professionals are actually at the forefront of doing it. And it's good that one of the key things is that it's a requirement, but now it just needs to be something which happens without having to be suggested. It's just a norm right now, and I can see it being taken up quite a bit around the country.
Great, thank you, Wilson. So we're coming to our closing parting shots on this webinar, and what I want to just come back and ask you to, if you would close with two things. We're talking about mixed use developments. We're talking about winning in a pandemic. We're talking about professionals in the built environment setting themselves up for success in this future of real estate. What would you say? How would you position yourself? What would you advise someone who's looking at developing either a niche market for their clients? If there's a developer who's looking at what is a niche product I can start to bring to the market, what do you want to leave people from this webinar with in their thinking about the winning in a pandemic, and some more, if you want to point them to some more places to go and think about developing that winning strategy? So Wilson, I'm going to start back with you, and then come back around.
Thank you, Robyn. I think for me, the parting shot will be, we need to be very cognizant of the market in the respective areas. Because if I look at someone planning a project in, say, a high-end area, Runda, Karen, Kilimani, Kitisuru, there's a certain sort of clientele, and there's certain elements or types of vendors who want to go to that kind of market. If I go all the way back to even Isinya, whereby you find many people are putting up homes, what kind of amenities will they need? It doesn't mean that they only want the Woolworths and whatnot. No, maybe there's another kind of approach to it, and that's all about planning and studying the market. I think we need to be very keen on studying the markets in our various developments, be it residential, commercial, and recreational. And in terms of mixed use, that brings all of those together, because a mixed use may have just houses and shops, another will only have offices and shops, another will have all of them, homes, offices, shops, God knows. So that element of ensuring that we are addressing the market need and just doing that due diligence, which is something I keep advising my clients. We need to do due diligence on our projects. That's one thing which I think we need to do. Even our own residential projects. If I'm doing my home, you also need to have a little bit of due diligence. Why build houses with 6-7 bedrooms, and you'll be living alone there with your wife after 10 years or so. So a bit of due diligence in planning is what we need to do. And that's what I'll leave as a parting shot. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jayesh?
As for my parting shot, I mean, I am totally in agreement with what Wilson has actually elaborated on in terms of do your due diligence very much, know the demographics and the area that you're working with. Of course, see what's around and what's required. See how you can actually make it affordable for people around the area as well. And most importantly, try to create a community, basically. And that way, it makes it easier for people to be around each other as well. So, yes, I mean, apart from what Wilson has added, I don't think I have much to add on it. But very importantly, just to understand that mixed use developments are something that we seriously need to look at, because Nairobi as a city itself is actually quite saturated now, and people want to move out. So this is the opportunity that you've got, especially with infrastructure that is changing for us at the moment, with the new highways coming in as well and all that. It's making it easy to commute back and forth as well, as much as the traffic is there. But try to see what you can make it do outside Nairobi, which will also be a suburb kind of a feel. Thank you.
Esther?
Great. Without really going back to what the two have said, looking at mixed use, I would like to advise developers. It's not a one size fits all. It's not that because mixed use developments are the way to go, it doesn't mean that it applies to every part of the market. There are some markets that will accommodate it. Some markets may not be ripe enough to accommodate it. We have to look at what is the economic activity around the parcel of land that you're looking at to support the mixed development that you want to put up. If you put up a beautiful mixed development in a place without economic activity to support it, then you may still end up with a failure, despite the fact that mixed use developments are doing quite well. The second thing I'd want to advise developers especially is the issue of flexibility and adaptability. As you're coming up with designs for these mixed use developments, it's very important to bring on board consultants that will give designs that are flexible and be ready to adapt to what is changing. As we are discussing about thriving in a pandemic, the designs that are coming up should be able to be tweaked in a way that then the market will be able to respond to when the market changes. So flexibility and adaptability. The third thing is infrastructure, and I think this one, Wilson brought it up quite well in our discussions. I work with a developer who has put up a development where gas, electricity, water, waste management, roads, all of them have been catered for within the development, where this infrastructure is a problem. So the developer has taken it upon themselves to ensure that throughout all around Freedom Heights, the project is completely sustainable and that community is able to operate without really facing the same challenges of infrastructure that the neighborhood is currently facing. So as you put up these mixed-use developments to the developers, it's important you think infrastructure, think offering services, think about putting up a project that will be sustainable 5, 10, 15 years down the line without it being run down because of stretch and overstretch on the available infrastructure. Thank you. That's my submission.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you, everyone, for being here today for today's webinar series, Winning in a Pandemic. We're looking at the option of mixed development. I want to thank Wilson, very much Wilson, Jayesh, and Esther. And again, on behalf of BuyRentKenya and Building in Kenya, thank you very much for being here. Please do know that I have 2 other sessions in this series, and you can sign up. The link has been in the chat. Many of you want to engage further with the panelists. Their Twitter handles are also being shared, so you can engage with them, find them, and carry this conversation further. Again, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to being with you again at the next webinar series. Will take place on, let's see here, okay, July, goodness, sorry, I don't have the flyer in front of me. I am so sorry. But you will look forward if you've signed up and you get the information. We'll make sure that you get the information and be here as we talk about real estate investments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great day. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Robyn.
Good day, everyone.
Great day. Bye-bye.